Oh, sorry. Thank you all for tuning in for the second episode of Buckeye Beat. This is Taylor Ashbrook, Ohio State beat reporter for EBSN Online. I'm joined by my co-host, AJ King, host of the Spectrum Podcast. How you doing tonight, AJ?
Hey, happy to be here. Glad to join you to break down Ohio State Penn State week. We finally arrived. Some steep competition for the Buckeyes this week, so I'm just happy to kick this off with you, Taylor. How are you doing tonight?
I can't complain. My birthday was this past weekend. I had a great time, so that was a lot of fun. Got a Ohio State W for my birthday, so it wasn't a bad way to spend my Saturday. So pretty happy. Got Penn State coming up this weekend, a matchup that everybody in the country is probably going to be watching this weekend, as Ohio State has their first ranked matchup of the season under Urban Meyer. So will be very interesting to see how that goes. And but first off, before we start the show, let's just go ahead and recap this past weekend. We don't have to spend too much time on the Tulane game because, let's be honest, it's Tulane. So, I mean, there's not much to say. I mean, Ohio State kicked the crap out of them, at least in the first half, and then things kind of sputtered out there in the second half when all the second and third stringers got into the game. Tate Martell scored that touchdown with like 2 minutes left in the game. So, I mean, outside of that, it was a very uneventful second half. But Dwayne Haskins, I mean, that was about this man, what he has done in essentially 5 halves of football this season is, I don't think we've ever seen it done before.
Absolutely. Dwayne absolutely dominated the game. I was sad to see him leave the game in the second half. I guess as a greedy fan, I wanted him to pour it on even more and see if he could maybe rival some NCAA records. But, you know, Urban took him out and let Tate Martell get some reps in. But I guess here's my thing with the Tulane game, and this might sound crazy. It's hard to criticize a team when you win 49 to 6. It's hard to criticize a team when you beat somebody down that way. But my thing was, I felt like Tulane, who was absolutely outmatched talent-wise, I think we both can agree with that, they moved the ball too much for my liking. And once that in particular, them being 4 for 12 on third down conversions, which let's just be honest. A team like Tulane that's so outmatched and outclassed shouldn't be able to move the ball at all. I guess it just worries me a little bit, and especially the secondary getting burned on a couple of plays deep. It worries me going into a game against Penn State where they have a lot more talent, a lot more weapons on the outside, and obviously a much more dynamic quarterback in Trace McSorley. So talk me off the ledge, Taylor, because really hard to criticize a team when you dominate a game in that way. And obviously a lot of the backups played in the third and fourth quarter. But I guess I just was a little worried with some of the defensive performance, and that's been a theme throughout the first 4 games.
No, I'm not even going to try to talk you off the ledge on the defense. I mean, there are still glaring problems in that, you know, especially that linebacker unit and even in that secondary as well. Isaiah Pryor has made quite an improvement in the last few weeks, though. I will note that. Jordan Fuller is going to be Jordan Fuller. You know what you're going to get from him every single week. He's going to be fantastic. But, you know, I thought this was a very interesting stat that my friend Tony Girdman from the Ozone pointed out today in Urban Meyer's press conference, that Ohio State starting linebackers didn't have a single tackle between the 3 of them against Tulane. Now,
yeah,
the backups got put in, you know, by halftime. I mean, right. I think they played maybe like a quarter and a half and then they were done. But, I mean, not a single tackle by any of your starting linebackers. You know, that's just – I don't know if that's ever been done in the history of Ohio State. Now, that, you know, obviously they held Tulane to 6 points. I mean – I don't know how much of that is just the linebackers struggling or if there just wasn't a tackle to be made, but very shocking that, you know, the linebackers, not even a single tackle. And there were a couple of big plays that Tulane had there that maybe, you know, they could have stopped. But Urban Meyer did say that today that he has been very impressed by Malik Harrison. So there's that.
Yeah, and it seemed like when Tony asked that question that Urban didn't even really have a response. It's clear that he
had no response at all.
Exactly, and it's clear that he wasn't worried, which maybe should maybe that should temper my worry a little bit.
Make people feel better. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Exactly. But I don't know. I find it to be a little worrisome. And obviously, like you said, there's not a whole lot to go through with the Tulane game, except for praise for Dwayne Haskins. When is he going to get some Heisman love, Taylor? I need to know, because he looks like the best quarterback in the country to me.
And that's one of the things I wanted to talk about later on in the show. By the way, all of you tuning in, be sure to comment your questions down below. We got Robert Collins here on the Everything Buckeye Nation Facebook with 4 games in. No Tyreek Johnson. His high school lights were off the charts. Is he hurt or something? He's wondering why Tyreek Johnson's not playing yet. And that's a good question. I know there are a lot of young guys that are very talented, but I think Urban's rolling with the guys that he thinks can do best right now. I think you might see Tyreek Johnson and guys like that later on in the season. I haven't heard anything about an injury to him. I could be wrong. I mean, there's 85 players on the roster, and you keep up with maybe like 50 or 60 of them at any given time. But I haven't heard anything about an injury to Tyreek Johnson. Now, a guy like Jeffrey Okudah has been getting a lot of playing time this year, and he's really made the most of his opportunities, and he's starting to look really good. The Texas product kind of showed off against TCU last week and is going to be looking to contain Penn State this week. So thank you guys for commenting. Let us know where you're watching from. Give us any of your questions that you have, and we will use our insider and fan and graduate knowledge to answer those for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely comment your questions. We're going to be answering them throughout the show, and we'll have a Q&A section throughout the show or towards the end of the show where we'll answer your questions today. So thank you so much for listening. So my question for you, Taylor, speaking of injuries, Urban Meyer made it pretty clear that Nick Bosa won't be seeing the field anytime soon. He obviously underwent surgery this past week to fix a sort of a muscle injury. They called it a core muscle injury in their official release. So Urban said you're probably not going to be seeing him until at least November. My question for you,
just to step in there, AJ, it wasn't Urban that said that. That was a report by, I believe, Bill Landis at Cleveland.com, and it was then confirmed by 11 Warriors as well. They spoke to Joey Bosa's dad, John. Not Joey, I guess it's Joey Bosa's dad too, but Nick Bosa. They're both good football players. You get them mixed up from time to time. Now, Joey's dealing with some injuries of his own in the NFL. He's out until, next month. But his brother Nick, Urban said in his press conference that he wouldn't be available this week against Penn State. Obviously, I think we all knew that.
Right.
Going into even Tulane, I think everybody knew as soon as they said core muscle injury surgery, everybody knew, okay, he's out for Penn State. Now, what the reports have been saying today is that they are not even going to reevaluate him until November, as concerning to his injury status. At least in the top overall draft pick, wants to get out on the football field and help as much as he can, obviously. And I've spoken with Nick Bosa a few times in his career, and many times actually, and he does strike me as one of those guys that if he can play, he's going to want to play. So Alan Russell on Facebook actually asked, how will we look without? So he asks, how will the defensive line look without Nick Bosa? And I'll go ahead and get you to answer the question here. So what's your take on Nick Bosa? Do you think that Ohio State's defensive line will be fine without him?
Sorry, I lost you there for a minute. But yeah, that's something that I wanted to get into, because obviously without him against Penn State, one of the keys to the game for me is getting.
All right, we see. I think you touched on it a little bit, saying that you think they'll be fine. Is that what you're saying? All right, we seem to be losing AJ here. We'll get him back up here in a second. But to go off of your question, Alan, I think Ohio State's defensive line will be fine. I think Draymond Jones is a guy that can really make an impact up front there at defensive tackle. You got guys like B.B. Landers and you got Chase Young and Jonathan Cooper there on the edge. And Chase Young was feeling very confident after the Tulane victory 2 days ago. I asked him about it in postgame. He was saying that they're very confident in their group up front. And, he said, obviously, it's a big blow to lose a guy like Nick. But, it's next man up at Ohio State, and this is incredible to me how Ohio State is able to do this year in and year out is that injuries don't seem to affect this team at all. And that's the program that Urban Meyer has built here at Ohio State. I mean, you're talking about the first 3 games of the season. You don't have your Hall of Fame head coach on the sidelines. That kills the season for a lot of other teams besides Ohio State.
Absolutely.
You've got probably the best defensive player in the country out for what could be the rest of the season. And if Ohio State goes into Happy Valley on Saturday night, that might be the hardest place to play in the country. I mean, all respect to the Horseshoe. I mean, that place gets really damn loud, but from everything I hear, I'm actually going to Penn State for the first time in my career this weekend. That should be fun. But from all the stories I've heard from my grandparents, living in Happy Valley for about a decade, they used to go to that game all the time, and they said that is the toughest environment to play in college football, especially in a whiteout. So if they waltz into Penn State this weekend and get a victory and dominate defensively, at least on the line, without Nick Bosa, I mean, that just really speaks to that just testifies to the kind of program that Urban Meyer has built here at Ohio State and the strength of it, that it's just next man up.
Absolutely. And that includes the quarterback position, too, as we've seen over the past 4 or 5 years with Urban Meyer. Even when a quarterback goes down, they can still flourish and somehow succeed with their second and even third string quarterbacks like in 2014. So it's pretty unbelievable, like you said. I think I'm more so concerned with Ohio State's defense, more so in the linebacking core and in the secondary. I do think they're going to be able to get some pressure, and hopefully, much like last season against Penn State, getting pressure up front will allow the DBs to cover a lot more effectively, because they won't have to spend, a whole lot of time out there on an island against some talented Penn State receivers. So that's one thing I'm looking forward to. But I agree with you. That's one of the toughest places to play in college football. I told you last week, this is probably the one game I'm most concerned about on Ohio State's schedule, just because going into that environment, it seems like anytime Ohio State goes to Penn State, it's a night game. It's probably going to be a top 10 or 15 matchup, and it's going to be a whiteout. And the fans are going to be going crazy. Ohio State has to somehow overcome that. Now, going on the road and winning in Texas against TCU was impressive, but like we talked about, that was a mostly Ohio State crowd. So this will be the first time they're really going into enemy territory. Should be interesting to see how they come out on top.
I'm with you, AJ, and once again, thank you all for tuning in tonight. Sorry, we had a couple of technical difficulties to start the show. We're still young. We're still a young show. All right, so try not to be too critical of us, at least with the technicality of things. But thank you all for tuning in. Let us know what you want to know about the team going into Penn State. Here, Dan Ludwig on Facebook asks, will Master Teague be the second back this weekend? He's asking if he will be the backup running back this weekend. No, I don't believe so, Dan. I mean, Urban Meyer did confirm today in his press conference that Mike Weber will in fact play this weekend against Penn State. He suffered a little bit of an injury there in the second half, I believe. Not the second half, the second quarter against Tulane, and it looked like it could have been bad, but he's been cleared by team doctors and everything. He's good to go for Penn State. So now, will you see more of Master Teague in the future? That's to be seen. I don't know how much they plan on getting him involved when you've already got guys like J.K. Dobbins and Mike Weber splitting carries, and then you want to throw a third running back into that. Now, Master Teague is a very talented running back, and I think everybody on the Ohio State beat is in concurrence that the running back unit is the unit that Ohio State probably has to worry about the least for in terms of the future. When you've got guys like Master Teague and Brian Snead. I know Brian Snead has been dealing with some off the field team violations here lately. That's why he didn't play against Tulane. That's why he didn't travel for TCU. But I mean, you've got some really good running backs in that room. But Dan, to answer your question, I don't think that'll be the case. I think you're still going to see Mike Weber and J.K. Dobbins. Now, will they rely more heavily on Dobbins this weekend? How good is Mike Weber to actually play this weekend at Penn State? I know Urban said he is going to play against Penn State, but how many snaps he's actually going to get. I don't know if they'll keep him to a snap count or anything. If they were going to play him, I think they're going to play him. But thank you for your question, Dan.
You, Taylor. First, actually, I have two questions for you. One, what has your impression been of Ohio State's running game? Do you think it's something they can lean on in a road game? And then, I guess, going off of that, do you feel like Ohio State is going to be able to air it out against Penn State the way they've done it the first 4 weeks? Urban talked a little bit about it. He said he's one for balance, but if the defense is giving you something over the top, he's going to take it. So, yeah, I guess those two things I'm curious about. What's your impression been of the running game, and do you feel like that's something that can be dominant for the Buckeyes?
Well, the running game is obviously something that can be improved on. I think if I've got my stats up here, I think they only had something like J.K. Dobbins only had 55 yards. Mike Weber only had 19 yards. I mean, I know they only played, one half of football. Right. Mike Weber didn't even play that, but, J.K. Dobbins only averaged 5 yards a carry. Mike Weber only averaged 3 yards a carry. And I know 5 yards a carry sounds fantastic to a lot of programs, but I mean, at Ohio State, you like to see them more around that 6.5 yards per carry average.
And a lot of that was Dwayne airing the ball out too. Like Urban said, they were playing zero coverage, and it was pretty much pitch and catch. I mean, and again, Ohio State's receivers outclass whoever was guarding them for Tulane. So that's one thing. But yeah, I mean, obviously the numbers don't look amazing, but I'm just curious if you think that's something they'll be able to ride against Penn State. I thought it was impressive against TCU. It was
impressive against TCU. Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, I don't know if it was just a bad day for the running backs. I mean, Austin Mack had that bad game against TCU, and then he kind of came back a little bit there against Tulane. I think, he had a pretty decent game against Tulane, but I think it all comes down to the offensive line. I mean, I didn't really see the offensive line opening up holes like they usually do against Tulane this past weekend. I think that they got to get better in the blocking game and open up some of those holes for the running game. Now, when you've got a guy like Dwayne Haskins that's airing it out and dropping balls on a dime to receivers, that definitely helps when you've got some struggles in the running game. But, in an offense like Ohio State, you got to have a running game. Urban always likes to split the run and pass game 50-50. That's always been his trademark. Now he says that he understands the realities of if the pass game is elite, you're going to do more passing than running. But you've definitely got to keep that running game in there just to keep the defense honest, a little bit. And that's why I'm kind of wondering if Dwayne Haskins might get involved in the run game a little bit more as we keep progressing into the season. Maybe if he can get 5 to 10 yards a carry, that would greatly improve the offense just to keep, that defensive end honest on read options. But, you asked earlier, AJ, about if Penn State's defense is anything to worry about with Ohio State's passing game. I really don't think it is. I mean, I'm not sure. It depends on what Penn State team we get. Are we going to get the Penn State team that, held Pitt to 6 points and held Kent State to 10 points? Or are we going to get the team that gave up 38 to Appalachian State at home and gave up 24 to a mediocre Illinois team on the road? And this is going to be a very interesting game. I think this is actually going to be a shootout of sorts. You've got the top two offenses statistically in terms of scoring on either side of the ball. Penn State's number one in scoring with 55.5 points per game, and Ohio State's second in the nation in scoring with 54.5 points per game. So one of those records is going to fall, either that or it's just going to be a shootout. But I think there's going to be a lot of points scored in the game. I don't know what the over-under is yet, but I'm definitely taking the over on whatever it is. Ohio State they held TCU to 28 points. That's a very high-octane offense, and I don't think they're going to see another offense with that high of tempo for the rest of the season. I'd like to think that they can contain Penn State, and I think Urban kind of has something to prove this weekend against Penn State. I think he is going to try to make a statement this weekend since he wasn't there for the TCU game. With this report coming out this weekend from Ari Wasserman at The Athletic that Ohio State is reportedly in talks with Ryan Day to make him their coach in waiting. I think he might, want to come out and say, hey, Ryan Day is great and all, but I'm the coach now, and I'm going to show you all why I'm your head coach and why you pay me, $8 million a year to coach the game of football and win you national championships. Right. So I wouldn't be shocked if Ohio State went out there. I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't really be shocked by any result in this game, to be completely honest with you. I wouldn't be shocked if Ohio State lost this game. I wouldn't be shocked if it was a shootout. I wouldn't be shocked if Ohio State won this game by 2 touchdowns. There are just so many different outcomes I see in this game, and I just don't know what to expect until I actually see it, if that makes sense.
Right, and a lot of that has to do with the environment. You have to see I expect some early game jitters, much like we saw Austin Mack dropping passes against TCU. You might see some guys a little jittery, maybe see some early mistakes. So I think that's something that's possible. But you brought up something interesting with, reports coming out that Ohio State is looking to make Ryan Day coach in waiting. I thought that was, really interesting because we've heard rumors, nothing confirmed, but heard rumors during the entire scandal that Urban Meyer went through that he might potentially step down. So hearing something like they're looking to make Ryan Day a coach in waiting made me perk up because I was like, does that mean they're potentially preparing for Urban, for life after Urban earlier than we all may expect? But Gene Smith kind of shot that down pretty quickly. He said he expects Urban to be around for a while. But I'm
going to chime in there really quick too. I kind of expect Urban Meyer to be around for a while. Now, how short of a leash he has, after this whole scandal and everything like that. I mean, I think this, got blown up out of proportion and whatnot, and this whole thing was sensationalized, but I wouldn't be surprised if Urban Meyer had a little bit shorter of a leash now, after this whole ordeal.
Absolutely.
But I don't think this is even a story at this moment. I think Ryan Day is going to get a head coaching job long before Urban Meyer is ready to step down or gets fired or however his departure comes. I think Ryan Day's probably gone after this season, to be honest with you.
Wow.
For the way, he's going to get, let me put it this way. It's going to be very hard for Ryan Day not to walk away from Ohio State after this season because he's going to get tons of phone calls from really good head coaching positions in this country. And it's going to be really hard for him to turn a lot of those down. I mean, I don't see him staying at Ohio State for very long. I think he's got another season or two here, max. I think he's the next head coach in waiting somewhere else, but that's just my take on it.
I mean, that's interesting that you say that. I could see Ohio State maybe throwing him a large amount of money to try to keep him around, something to that effect. But I tend to agree with you. He's going to be so hot and on the market. It reminds me a little bit of Tom Herman and how he just couldn't resist going to be a head coach after having so much success as Ohio State's offensive coordinator. And from all reports, it seems like Ryan Day is doing a great job with the QBs and also game planning on offense. I do want to answer a question we have here in the comments from Matthew Brown. Shout out to Matthew. Shout out to everybody that's listening around the world. Make sure you're following Taylor on Twitter. She's amazing. And follow me if you want. I mean, I'm okay.
And be sure to follow EBSN online as well. You can check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Listen to all of our podcasts on iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play. Whatever podcasting system you like best, it's on it. So be sure to check out all of our podcasts. But anyway, shout out to Matt.
So Matthew Brown is saying, we were talking a little bit about the defensive struggles, especially in the linebacking core. Amazingly, no starting linebacker got a tackle against Tulane, which, That's a shocking stat.
But Dante Booker played really well, though. So there's that.
Well, maybe we need to see more of Dante. So Matthew was asking, how should the linebackers defend effectively? And it seems like they're struggling at the second level. And I guess my piece I'll add to this is it seems to me like they're taking a lot of bad angles. And I've seen some people speculate that maybe the defense is a little too complicated for them because Greg Schiano is trying to run an NFL scheme with guys who don't necessarily have the NFL talent that linebackers in the past at Ohio State have had. But yeah, I think it's just a more fundamental type of thing. If you're taking bad angles to the football, that's something that can be coached and something that can be fixed. And at the end of the day, no matter the drop off from past linebacking cores, you're still at the Ohio State University and you have the talent to play well. So I guess for me, it just seems like something they can fix in the film room, and the coaching staff can sort of make some changes. And maybe they do. Do you feel like they need to simplify things for these guys?
I'm not sure. I don't know if simplification is the answer. I think Bill Davis just needs to do a better job with developing these guys. I mean, ever since Bill Davis has taken over at that linebacker position, that position has fallen off a cliff. If I'm just speaking frankly, you used to have guys like, Raekwon McMillan and Darren Lee and all those guys tearing up the backfield, and Ryan Shazier even dating back a little bit more. But, it's just one of those positions that's got to get better. And you took the words right out of my mouth, AJ. They just got to get better angles on their tackles. They keep angling too harshly, and then, they play against a fast receiver or something like that, and he's already got them beat. Or a fast running back. You saw that against TCU a lot. So they got to work on their angles. They got to work on their tackling. There's a lot that needs to be worked on at that position. Same with the secondary. I've seen that same problem in the secondary with a couple of guys. Now, Jordan Fuller and Jeffrey Okudah have looked pretty good, and Isaiah Pryor's getting there. But, when you've got guys like Jocelyn Went that are struggling, that's a thing you got to tighten up there. Especially when you're going against the number one scoring offense in the country this weekend in Penn State on the road in a whiteout. That's not an easy thing. I mean, it wasn't just 2 short years ago. I think we all remember what happened, and I think Penn State's a lot better program than they were just 2 years ago. I know losing a guy, in a game changer like Saquon Barkley is a huge blow, and even a tight end like Mike Gesicki, who gashed that linebacker unit the last couple of years. But, Penn State's getting up there with the likes of Ohio State. I don't know if I'd say quite Ohio State or Alabama, but you know what I'm talking about. They are a program now that consistently replaces holes at positions, key positions, and just keeps on churning now, it seems like, the last couple of years. And they've got a couple of really good running backs. Urban Meyer even mentioned this when I asked him about it in his press conference today. They've got a couple of good running backs that can gash Ohio State's defense if they get past that front four,
Yeah, and I think that's something I'm worried about. Like Urban told you during the press conference, he gave them, it seemed to me like he was giving them a lot of praise. Miles Sanders is a guy who has a lot of speed in the open field, and that seems to be something Ohio State's defense is struggling with, tackling in the open field. I think that's one thing that worries me. It's interesting that you think this is going to be a shootout. I personally can't see that happening just because it's not something that you normally see with an Ohio State defense. But, I guess.
You kind of saw it a little bit last year in the Penn State game. That was fair, kind of a comeback victory. I don't know if I'd call it like a blow for blow shootout, but both offenses put up, 30 plus points. It was 39-38, I think was the final, 38-37, something like that.
Yeah,
I think it was 39-38. Yeah. It was that close, So, these are two teams that
JT Barrett's greatest game.
Yeah, his greatest quarter, more like it. We're not going to get into this discussion again. I know you stand JT Barrett. I'm going to stand Dwayne Haskins, and that's going to be.
I want to get into Dwayne though. And let's talk a little bit about this Heisman thing. We discussed it a little bit earlier. What does he need to do in this game to put himself at the forefront? Does he need to throw for another 4 or 5 touchdowns? Does he need to, squarely blow out a Penn State team? What needs to happen here for Dwayne to start getting some love? Because I haven't seen a guy better. And I've watched a little bit of Tua Tagovailoa out in Alabama. He brings a dimension to Alabama's offense that we haven't seen before. And I think the rest of the country should be very scared of Tua. But at the same time, I don't think he's as accurate on the deep ball. I don't think I've seen him make the decisions that I see Dwayne Haskins making. And Dwayne going through his progressions and his reads is something that I haven't seen anybody match quite yet this season. So, I want your take on that. Have you seen anybody who can match Dwayne, around the country?
I mean, you made some good points. Once again, thanks to everybody for tuning in. Paul Thompson on Facebook says, "Go Bucks." Dan Ludwig says, "Austin Mack is a beast. He will be a valuable piece as the year goes on." I agree with you, and he's going to be a valuable piece to a guy like Dwayne Haskins, who we're talking about. And I'm right with you. I think Dwayne Haskins is the best quarterback in the country. Him and Tua Tagovailoa, Hawaiian name. Whatever it is, I'm not good with names, AJ. I'm just not good.
I told my partner in crime, Jordan Plain, that my biggest accomplishment in 2018 was learning how to pronounce his name, Tagovailoa.
All right,
yes,
I think I got it. I'm just gonna butcher it, and I'm just gonna say Tua. He's just Tua or double T. That's what he is to me. But I think him and Dwayne Haskins right now have to be the front runners for the Heisman. I know Ed Oliver has been getting some love, as a defensive player, but let's be honest, a defensive player is not winning this award. I've seen guys like Will Grier
absolutely.
up there, and that I don't care. West Virginia's quarterback is not winning.
I was about to say I've seen some love for Will Grier. He hasn't played the level of competition that Dwayne has, though.
No, not even close. And Dwayne's gonna have his chance again this weekend in front of a top 10 team crowd to show that he is the best quarterback in the country. And I don't think he needs to throw for 400 yards and 5 touchdowns. I mean, I think if he puts up, a 250 to 300 yard and maybe throws for a few touchdowns, has a high completion rate, has a good QBR, I think those are all good things that help factor into his Heisman race. I mean, you're talking about this is a guy that has thrown for 16 touchdowns already this season. Braxton Miller threw for 16 touchdowns in the entire 2012 season that Ohio State went undefeated. I mean, that's pretty crazy to think about that. And Dwayne Haskins has done that in 2.5 games this season, essentially.
Right.
I mean, so I don't know what else this guy has to prove to get some love. I know ESPN hasn't exactly been showing him a lot of love. I think he's high up there in the Heisman odds, though, according to Vegas. But I firmly believe he's the best quarterback in the country. 1,200 yards passing, 17 total touchdowns. I mean, his completion rate is ridiculous. I mean, he's completing over 75% of his passes in the first half. And that's basically all he's played this season outside of TCU. I mean, that is ridiculous. I mean, and I'm going to get into a bit of a hot take here.
I'm on the Dwayne train.
I'm going to give my one hot take of the day here.
I love this. We need to make this a segment.
We need a hot take segment. I'm going to go ahead and say it. I think Dwayne Haskins is the best pure quarterback I've ever seen at Ohio State. And I've seen guys like Troy Smith and JT Barrett, who people say is the greatest quarterback, but I have my doubts. I know you think he's the greatest, but I definitely have my doubts, and I think things might have gone differently for him had he not gotten injured in the 2014 Michigan game. I think he might have won a couple more games and maybe another national championship. But just from what a quarterback is supposed to do and lead the offense and throw the ball downfield and conduct the way he has conducted it, I think he's the best quarterback I've ever seen at Ohio State. And Beanie Wells, the legendary running back from the Jim Tressel era, who played with Troy Smith, the Heisman winner. He tweeted out during the game the other day. He's like, man, I played with Troy, but I think I got to say it. Dwayne might be better than him. And he might even, and then Jake Stoneburner, I believe, chimed in saying he might be the best ever. And obviously there's a lot of football to play, so that's why this is a hot take. I mean, he's only played 4 games, but I mean, those have got to be some of the 4 greatest games I've ever seen in Ohio State history from a quarterback standpoint. I mean, the records he's breaking right now. I mean, here's a stat for you. The all-time record for 300-plus yard passing games at Ohio State is 8. J.T. Barrett and I can't remember who else is tied for it. I think it's Art Schlichter or something like that. Schlichter.
I want to say
it
might be Joe Germain, but we're gonna have to get.
It might be. It's one of those guys from the '90s or something like that. I wouldn't be surprised. But 8 games of 300-plus yards passing. Dwayne Haskins has 3 in 4 total collegiate starts. One of them was against TCU, where he put up 344 yards against a top 15 team. That is just bananas. I mean, he might break that record in one season, what it took JT Barrett 5 years to accomplish, it seemed like, you know. I mean JT was here for God knows how long.
Oh, you got to throw another shot in there. I don't disagree with you.
I don't hate JT. I just think I'm very much on the fence about JT. He's a nice guy. Love him. I just think that there were a couple things that he didn't do that I liked, that I didn't like, I'm saying, and I think he just needs to improve on those things.
Yeah, JT. So Bill Simmons has a name for this. He calls some guys 90-10 guys, and what he means by that is the 10%. He does 90% of the things great, but for some reason that 10% always sticks out. And I feel like JT Barrett was that guy because, you know, he was a winner. He did everything right. He did everything you wanted from a guy to get the W. He was great on the ground. But that 10%, those little bit of holes in his game, they stuck out like a sore thumb. And I think a lot of
especially in the
State
passing
fans,
game. I mean, just look at what the passing game has done in just 4 games since JT Barrett has not been the quarterback. And it's with the same receiving core. It's with the same running backs. You know, I mean, I know he lost a few offensive linemen, but you could argue that the offensive line was actually a lot better last year with a guy like Billy Price at center, you know, because Michael Jordan has had his struggles at center a little bit this season, especially against Penn State. TCU. Sorry, getting ahead of myself there. I'm actually predicting that Michael Jordan is going to have a bad game against Penn State. That's what that was. But I'm just kidding. I think he'll do fine. But anyways, I'm getting off track here. But I think what Ohio State has done in the past game this season, this might be Urban Meyer's best offense, at least from a passing standpoint, at Ohio State. And you look back at that 2014 offense, you know, you look back.
2015 too. I would argue that
2015 was really lackluster. I mean, that's why they didn't win the national championship that year. You know, if they would have hired anyone besides an offensive line coach to call plays for them after Tom Herman left, I think they probably would have won another national championship that year. All right, well, we got Alan Russell Chant? I was about to say chant, and then I went with chime, and then I came up with a new word. So we're just going to ignore that I did that. So Alan Russell is chiming in, saying that JT was a beast, and I know you're right there with him, AJ. I know you're with Alan. Shout out to Alan Russell. Thanks for tuning into the show. Take a couple more comments here. David Krause says, "Go Bucks." Ben Montez has a thumbs up. Thank you all guys for tuning in tonight. Let us know if you have any questions on the Buckeyes ahead of their top 10 matchup this weekend with Penn State, and we will answer those here on the show.
For sure. Yeah, no. You know, I shout out to Alan. Shout out to Alan for staying strong on the JT Hive. We're growing smaller by the minute. We got an intruder and Dwayne Haskins coming in and stealing our thunder, but we got to stay strong out here, Alan. Shout out to you. Shout out to everybody that's listening. But no, I agree with you. I've seen a lot of people say that. I've seen a lot of people praise Dwayne Haskins and say that this is probably the best passing attack that we've had, and I don't think there's a whole lot of disagreement that anybody can really bring up when people say this offense is way better than Ohio State's was last season. I don't think there's really much you can say about that. I think it's pretty clear. However, I will say a lot of that also has to do with the improvement of the receiving core. And maybe that's something we can get into because, aside from Austin Mack's tough game against TCU, the receiving core has been much improved. Terry McLaurin, KJ Hill, guys out here who I would say were not all that reliable in the past, to be quite frank. And they've come through this year. They've been reliable. At the end of the day, they're just catching passes. I felt like JT had to deal with a lot of drop balls last season. And
well, a lot of those were, some of those, were drop passes, and some of those were the fact that he was underthrowing and overthrowing guys. So, I mean, you can put a little bit of blame on the wide receiver unit. And definitely having Brian Hartline in there has helped immensely. And you can see it with the wide receiver unit this season. It's nice to see, wide receivers catching with their body instead of just their hands this season, which is kind of nice. So, and I think that's a change that Brian Hartline has kind of helped. But go on. Sorry.
Absolutely. I can't disagree. Dwayne Haskins has been unbelievable. I don't think it's a stretch at all. I don't even think it's a hot take to say that he's perhaps I definitely think I would say he's the best arm talent I've seen at Ohio State. Even when you take into account a guy like Troy Smith, who I think Troy, as years go on, he's going to become very underrated in Ohio State history because the infusion of the spread offense into college football.
That's a big word, infusion.
I know. It took me a minute to come up with that one. That's that Ohio State education.
The thesaurus tonight.
I know. But the infusion of the spread offense has really allowed for guys to rack up numbers. I often wonder if a Troy Smith, if a Terrell Pryor even was able to run Urban Meyer's offense, what type of numbers they would put up, because even a guy like TP, who wasn't the greatest passer in the world, but if you put him in the read option 15 or 20 times a game, he may have looked like Cam Newton in his season at Auburn. And I feel the same way about Troy Smith. So I don't want to disrespect the greats. I'm pretty big on keeping the greats, keeping their memory alive and well. Troy Smith, obviously, the last Heisman that we saw at Ohio State. But I don't disagree with you. Dwayne has been unbelievable. Obviously, he's got a lot to prove. That's the only reason I wouldn't say he's the greatest of all time, because he just has a lot to prove career-wise. But greatest arm talent? Sure, I'm right with you.
Ben Montez chimes in. He says that he is the best since Troy Smith in 2006. I agree with you. But, I mean, think about that. Even 2006 season, I think Troy Smith only had like 32 touchdown passes or something, I think, like that, right? Dwayne's already halfway there through 4 games, and you're talking about he's only played like 5 halves. He's going to blow Troy Smith's 2006 stats out of the water. He's going to blow out, I think, even JT Barrett's stats from the past few seasons. I think he had that. To see. What was that, 2014 season? I think he had 42 touchdown passes, something like that. I can't remember.
Broke a lot of freshman records in 2014.
He set a lot of records in 2014. That's why I don't like to rep JT Barrett too much. And I think JT Barrett would have had a different career trajectory had he not gone down against Michigan in 2014.
I agree.
I think it messed with him mentally. I think it messed with him a lot physically, especially his arm. You kind of saw that with Braxton Miller when he had his injury in 2013. He just couldn't throw a ball anymore after his injury, especially after the injury he suffered in fall camp of 2014 before the national championship season. That's why he was the third-string quarterback. He got transferred to, H-back. There was a reason he didn't play quarterback again, is because his arm was just too messed up. And I think that might have played a big factor into what JT's somewhat – it's hard to say struggles when the guy has broken just about every single Big Ten record there is. I mean, it sounds almost spoiled of us to say that JT Barrett struggled. But that's just the case at a school like Ohio State, and Dwayne Haskins is setting the new standard for the passing game here at Ohio State. And just so people understand, we might want to enjoy him this season, because I would not be shocked if he takes that exit to the NFL next season. I would not be shocked by that at
He's
all. I think
out of
this could be a
there.
one and done year, and Ohio State is going to be left wondering, what could have been if Dwayne Haskins had stayed more than one season.
It's funny you bring that up because I'm a little apprehensive about what the Tate Martell era of Ohio State football is going to look like. Tate's obviously a tremendous athlete. He has a lot of JT Barrett qualities to him in that I think he is going to end up doing enough with his feet and his arm that's obviously going to help Ohio State rack up a lot of wins, but I don't think it's going to be pretty. And I'm interested to see what Buckeye fans are going to feel like next season when Tate Martell is at the helm. That is, of course, if Dwayne Haskins does decide to leave early and go to the NFL. I'm interested to see what Buckeye fans are going to how they're going to receive Tate Martell, because I don't think it's going to be pretty with him. I don't think you can just fix a guy up and make him a pocket passer overnight. And I don't even think you should. I mean, his skills obviously lend themselves towards getting a guy out on the move, maybe letting him run like a JT Barrett 15 to 20 times. So I want to give a shout out to Joe McBride, who commented on the Facebook post. He said he feels like losing Barkley was too much for Penn State to overcome. We talked a little bit about that earlier. I mean, Penn State, they can reload now, like you mentioned. So they have some backs who can come in and kind of pick up where Saquon Barkley left off. I think one thing to note, however, is that Saquon Barkley never played well against Ohio State. Ohio State always did a really good job of keeping him in check. Now, he had a kick return for a touchdown.
Well, actually, I think there might have been like one game in 2015, I think, actually, where Saquon, I remember this for some odd reason, where I think he broke off for like 200 yards against 2015. But that was before Penn State was like in the national spotlight as like a top 25 team. But I just remember for some strange reason in 2015, because I think that was when Ohio State did the blackout. And I remember for some strange reason, Saquon Barkley going for like 150, 200 yards. And I was like, whoa, who's this kid? And then that was kind of the start of the Saquon era there at Penn State. But yeah, no, I get what you're saying. Ohio State has done. He's gone now, but they did a really good job containing Saquon Barkley when he was, at Penn State. And I think last year they held him to like, outside of that kickoff return that he took on the first, kickoff of the game, I think he was held to like something like 36 yards total rushing. I remember, now Penn State did end up scoring a crap ton of points, but I mean, they did a good job with shutting him down. But I think it comes down to this for me. For Penn State this weekend, at least, just in this nutshell, is that I think Ohio State got better this year than they were last year. Especially on offense. I think the defense is kind of stagnated a little bit. They've had their struggles last season at the linebacker position. Now the secondary took a step down this season. Obviously, when you lose a guy like Denzel Ward and other guys that were in that secondary, but. Just put it simply, I think Ohio State as a unit got better this season, especially on the offensive side of the football, which is where they really struggled the past few years. And it's absolutely crazy to say that they struggled when they averaged, like over 40 points a game. But it's just the reality of it. For Ohio State standards, I think they struggled and they got better. Penn State, I think they got less talented as a football team this season. Not just losing a guy like Saquon Barkley, who was a once in a generation talent at Penn State. You also lost a guy in Mike Gesicki at tight end, who I don't think enough people talked about enough in his time at Penn State. I thought he was going to be one of the top 5 tight ends taken in the draft. I thought he was that good at Penn State. I mean, he was one of those guys. I think he gashed Ohio State last season for like, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he went off for like 100, 150 receiving yards against Ohio State last year. There's always that one guy that seems to go off against Ohio State in a big game. I for some reason, the 2013 game against Wisconsin with Jared Abbrederis is standing out to me, where he just, I don't know why, that just popped into my head as a random memory. I don't know who all remembers that game, but I remember Jared Abbrederis.
I definitely remember that game.
I remember him burning Bradley Roby all night.
Bradley Roby there.
Yeah, yep. He was torching Bradley Roby in that game. I don't know why that just popped up in my head, but that That was an interesting memory. But anyways, like I said, I think it just comes down to the fact that Ohio State is better this season, and I don't think Penn State's better than they were last season. And Ohio State won last season. Now they got to go on the road this time, and that's going to be a very hard thing to do. And Penn, I asked Urban Meyer about it, how much is, what happened 2 years ago. I asked him, I know your personnel is a lot different than just 2 years ago, but how much are you using that as a motivation? And he said, he actually said they're not even really using that as motivation. He said that, maybe Wednesday or Thursday, they'll kind of have them watch film on it a little bit just to kind of understand what kind of environment they're going into. But they said, that was in the past. And they said that, they feel very confident this year going into Penn State, and don't get me wrong. I mean, Urban can spout all he wants about how they're not thinking about 2 years ago, but I think we all know in the back of Urban's mind, he's thinking about 2 years ago when they choked away a Big Ten championship that season, by losing to Penn State, and who thought at the time that it was going to implicate their Big Ten standing so much? Who thought Penn State was actually going to go out and win the rest of their games that season? I certainly didn't, but they ended up doing it anyway, and they won the Big Ten. I mean, this game has determined the Big Ten winner the last 2 seasons. I mean, and it's kind of crazy to think that we're not even into October yet, but the entire fate of the Big Ten this season is going to be determined by one game in late September. So, everybody can buckle up, but I think this is for the Big Ten East here this weekend.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. Yeah, this game is going to be huge. Urban tried to downplay it a little bit, but like you said, this one is a big one. I actually do want to look ahead a little bit, because if Ohio State does come out of Happy Valley with a win, that schedule has really opened up for them. With the way Nebraska
so much
has
easier.
Looked, oh my gosh, with the way Nebraska has looked early in the season, I mean, Nebraska looked completely outclassed against Michigan.
Scott Frost is just over his head there right now. I mean, I think it'll get better in the coming years, but I mean that is just a dumpster fire this season right now.
Absolutely, and he's got a lot of young guys, and I don't think he has any of his guys in there yet. So it's going to be quite the rebuild for a Nebraska alum in Scott Frost. But this year ain't it. And then
not by a mile. And I feel so bad because I've a friend on the Nebraska beat. Shout out to Erin Sorensen. She does a great job covering Nebraska for Hale Varsity, and I just feel so bad for her that she's just been waiting for a good Nebraska team for a while. But I think she's very excited about what Scott Frost can bring here. He's just got to get in his personnel, and I think you'll see that improve here in the next couple of years. I mean, he did win a national championship last year, after all, AJ. The man did win a national championship. Hashtag my national champions. Nothing but respect for my national champions, the UCF Golden Knights.
Scott has a track record of winning, and he tends to do a good job of coming in and rebuilding quickly, honestly. So honestly, you might want to look out for Nebraska next season. But
as far as this season goes, I think we all realize, and especially being at Ohio State, that game poses no threat. I don't think Ohio State has a game on their schedule that really poses a threat, honestly, until Michigan State, I think, is November 10th. I want to say, and then they play at Maryland, and then they got Michigan the week after that, obviously. So they got a tough couple of games down the stretch because they play at Michigan State, and then Michigan, no matter whether it's home and away, that game, no matter what the teams are ranked, no matter what stadium it's at, that game is always a hard-fought game. So that's going to be obviously a tough one. But hopefully by the time Michigan State rolls around, not Urban, Nick Bosa. We got a lot of people that were returning this season, AJ. This is the season of the return. So hopefully Nick Bosa will be back
on Saturday.
I know. Hopefully Nick Bosa will be back by the time they face Michigan State, but you never know. I mean, they're not even evaluating him again until November, so he could be out. But I agree. I think we're both in agreement that if Ohio State gets past Penn State, I think it could be very smooth sailing for the Buckeyes, at least until, the Michigan teams start coming up here again. The only team that I really see, And this is so stupid. I don't know why I think this, but I feel like Purdue is going to be a trap game because I feel like they're going to suck for the whole season. And then I don't know why, but I remember the 2009 season, and I was at Purdue in 2009 when I was 4 foot. So
different quarterback though.
Yeah,
TP
a lot better quarterback.
No
I think. I don't want to say a lot better. That's disrespecting TP. Gotta love TP. I mean, he got better the next season, and especially in that Rose Bowl. But I remember at Purdue in 2009 and I'm sure many Buckeye fans our age and older do, when Terrell Pryor turned the ball over 4 times against Purdue. And Purdue is, I don't know why, but I feel like we're going to be one of their 3 wins. I have like a gut feeling, like 20% down in my stomach, that Purdue is going to get a win against Ohio State this season. I don't think it's a very high chance. I'm just saying I think there's a chance. You know, if we can insert that, you're saying there's a chance gif. I don't know how to do that yet. I'm not that technically smart. But we're just going to describe gifs on this show. That's how we're going to plug gifs. We're just going to describe them.
We can describe memes to people. That's the new way.
We'll just describe memes. That should be an entire segment, is just describing memes.
You know it's 2018 when people like have a list of favorite memes that they can rattle off at any point.
Oh, I agree. But all right, we're getting a little bit off track here. Well, once again, thank you all for tuning in tonight. We appreciate it. Let us know if you have any questions down in the comments. We're about to wrap it up here because it is coming up on 7 o'clock. Let's give a couple more shout outs. Thank you to Ben Montez and Alan Russell for tuning in. He commented there about JT. He said the thing about JT was that he could pull it down and run for a key first down. And I'm in agreement with that. And I think that's one of the things that Ohio State should implement a little bit. I think I don't want them to go away from the run game altogether with the quarterback. I think about 5 to 10 snaps, rushing for Dwayne Haskins is a healthy number for him in a game, just to keep the defense honest on like read options and stuff like that. But I was taking Dwayne Haskins to run for over 50 yards this past weekend, and that didn't happen. So I was wrong with my bold prediction, and we're at the end of the show. So we're going to go with our score predictions and bold predictions. Let us know down in the comments really quick over the next few minutes. What are your bold predictions? What are your score predictions? I want to start with you, AJ. Go ahead. Bold prediction for this weekend against Penn State and your score prediction. Go.
All right. So selfishly, this past weekend, I should say, I wanted Urban to run it up so I would look like a genius on this here show, Buckeye Beat, with Taylor Ashbrook. But he took Dwayne Haskins out the game. This week, I can pretty confidently say Dwayne will play 4 quarters. I'll say Ohio State wins 34-17.
Wow, confident.
I'm pretty confident.
You think Penn State, the number 1 scoring offense in the country, is only scoring 17 points against this Buckeye defense?
I do. It doesn't sound like I said. So a lot of people have predicted a shootout. Even you yourself have
I just said that. I think it's going to be a shootout.
Right. So, but I just don't see that happening. I can't imagine an Ohio State defense getting in a shootout, looking like a Big 12 game where it ends up being 48-45 late in the game. I just can't.
You got to go a little bit higher than that for Big 12 games because Big 12 defense is garbage.
Right.
I don't know why, but I was remembering this because I know you stan Pat Mahomes, and I'm standing Baker Mayfield right now because he's with my Brownies. And somebody posted, I think today or the other day or something like that on Twitter that, that there was a game where Pat Mahomes was at Texas Tech and Baker Mayfield was at Oklahoma. And that game ended like 66-59. Pat Mahomes, they combined for like 12 touchdowns between Baker Mayfield and Pat Mahomes. They each had over like 500 yards passing. And it was like the most amazingly disgusting defensive game I've ever seen.
Yeah, you can probably look forward to that when the Browns and the Chiefs face off too, because the Chiefs can't defend anybody either. But I'll go 34-17. Buckeyes get the win.
And
the
then bold
defense
prediction.
steps up. It won't be pretty. I'm not saying they're going to turn into the 85 Bears all of a sudden. But I do think they step up. They hold Penn State to 17 points. My bold prediction, J.K. Dobbins, he steps up. 150 plus yards for J.K. Dobbins on the ground to stabilize the offense and allow for Dwayne Haskins to work the play action and get the ball down the field. That's my bold prediction.
That's a lot of rushing yards for a guy that only had 55 this past weekend against Tulane.
I think he's going to get a lot of opportunities.
There we go. I mean, I think he gets close to 100. I think between Mike Weber and J.K. Dobbins, I think those two will combine for 150 yards rushing. I could see that. Penn State, they always have a really good defense, especially on that line. But Larry Johnson's not with them anymore. He's with Ohio State. They don't have a guy like Carl Nassib anymore up front. I remember him being really good for Penn State a couple of years ago. But I'm kind of with you. I think that Mike Weber and J.K. Dobbins will combine for 150 yards rushing. And I'm going to go with a bold prediction. I think Dwayne Haskins throws for 4 touchdowns and over 300 yards again, gets his fourth 300-yard passing game of the season. I think he's just that good of a quarterback. And I think just the way that I've noticed, being around Dwayne and covering the team this season, that the way he conducts himself, I am in love with it. I mean, he just exudes confidence. I mean, he was wearing a Friday by Felicia shirt post game after the Tulane victory, and I was like, that guy has swagger. And it was just Ice Cube and Chris Tucker, and then it said bye Felicia at the bottom. If that is a guy that's not about to put up 300 yards and 4 touchdowns against Penn State, I don't know what is. But that's my bold prediction. My score prediction, I don't know. I'm having some struggles with this one. I'm going to go.
Stick with your shootout prediction. Make it
bold.
I'm
going to go 42-38 Ohio State. I don't know why. I just think there's going to be a field goal by one of these teams. And
okay.
It could be Ohio State, but I think it's going to be like 45-35 Ohio State or like 42-38 Ohio State. I think they win this game, though. I don't think they win it big, and I'll be pleasantly happy and surprised if they do win this big. I mean, I won't be surprised, really. I mean, they did. I mean, they struggled against TCU in the first half, but, I mean, they did end up winning that game by double digits, kind of on the road. But, I mean, this is a different environment for them. I don't think this is going to be a game that they're going to blow them out. I would love to be proved wrong, but I've got them winning this one in a shootout, like 42-35, somewhere along those lines. You can, I'll say that. 42-35, that's my immortal lock. I think that's
all right. Closest person to get this score right. We'll have to buy dinner when I'm in town at Ohio State for homecoming. We'll have to make that happen.
Oh, you're coming up here in 2 weeks for homecoming?
I'll be up there in 2 weeks, yeah.
Oh, we got to reunite up there. You know that.
Oh, for sure.
Well, thank you guys.
I'm sure Ohio State will put a beat down on Indiana, too.
Oh, that's going to be Ohio State always picks the crap game for homecoming. Except for like 2013 when they almost got beat by Iowa. So.
Of course.
That was the game where Carlos Hyde, I think, had that amazing like Superman touchdown, and I don't know why. I'm having all kinds of reminiscence of the 2013 season. I'm bringing up Jared Abbrederis. I'm bringing up Carlos Hyde. I am reminiscing in my 2013 high school years right now. My God.
Oh, my goodness.
I know.
Hey, man, shouts out to everybody that listened to us today. Again, follow us, EBSN Online. That's at EBSN Online on Twitter, Facebook. You can catch the replay of this show on Apple Podcasts. You said Google Play. We're everywhere. Oh, my gosh.
I'm telling you, man, anywhere you want to stream us, you can stream us, baby. And thank you, everybody, again, for tuning in. Just a couple more comments here really quickly. Ben Montez, when I said I think Purdue is going to be a trap game, he says, "Don't you wish that evil on us, Ricky Bobby?" I appreciate a good Talladega Nights reference, so thank you for that, Ben. And then he also says his score prediction for this weekend is 44-21 Ohio State. Now, that is a very interesting score prediction. Does he mean – so, Ben, do you think that they're going to get 3 field goals, or are you saying they're going to get 6 touchdowns and like a safety? Because I'm trying to figure out the math on how they're getting to 44. But I'm kind of with you there. I think Ohio State scores a lot of points, but I think Penn State's going to get their fair share of points as well. I mean, this is going to be a very exciting game. I'm excited to hit the road to go cover this game. I'll be bringing you guys all the live coverage of that here on EBSN Online on our Twitter and Facebook pages, so be sure to like us and follow us on those platforms. as I'll be giving you all the live content from Happy Valley this weekend for the top 10 matchup. I'm excited for it. This is what college football is all about. We're playing a top 10 matchup in an actual college football stadium. Not that I don't love AT&T Stadium, but this is where college football is supposed to be played, in college venues. So I'm excited for it. I know you're excited for it. I know the fans, you guys are excited for it. So
For sure.
Thank you all for tuning in, and we will